Hey, what's up, guys? Episode 303 of Richard Metal Fan Interviews, calling from Zoom, and I'm here with Will Buckley from Anubis, Hydira, and The Keeper. So, how are you doing today, man?
Hey, I'm doing good. Pleasure to be here. Thanks for reaching out. I'm happy to talk about metal bands and all that great stuff here.
It's so great to be able to talk with you. So kind of like the format is, I want to talk about like your musical history and sort of do a rundown of your discography, but take you back to young Will. So, kind of growing up, what were the first bands that got you into metal? What made you want to be a guitarist and slap at a bass?
So actually, way back in the day, I started out like really listening to 90s pop. So like Backstreet Boys, NSYNC, Britney Spears,
I
all
love
that
that
stuff.
shit too. Like Millennium by Backstreet Boys, I think is a really great album.
That was my first album that was not a Weird Al CD.
Really, I remember the
Yeah,
eBay parody was great. Like sell it on eBay. Have you ever
yeah,
heard that one? I thought that
yeah.
was
Sure
fucking
have.
hilarious.
Dare to be Stupid was my favorite album too. Uh, but yeah, right off of the bat, Larger Than Life has a freaking guitar solo in it. A lot of that Lou Pearlman material, like if you just had some mellow death bands play those same songs and like metalize, like you don't really even need to change anything. They're metal as hell.
I agree.
Yeah, but as far as like actual like heavy music, I naturally from there since I was mostly listening to the radio and stuff, I was going from that stuff to like Linkin Park and Sum 41, the pop punk and
Dude, that was my shit too
uh,
growing up because I fucking loved Sum 41, that one and Blink 182 and Green Day. That was like the pop punk stuff was the next thing before Backstreet Boys and NSYNC. And then
yeah.
new metal came along because I was really big into like Korn, Slipknot, Linkin
Oh,
Park,
absolutely.
System of a Down and shit like that.
Yeah, I'm a huge Slipknot fanboy too.
Like
Of course, like hearing just the first like 30 seconds of People Equal Shit. That's like probably one of the it was the heaviest thing I'd ever heard, and
yeah,
probably still to this
same. I
day.
thought it was like they went more of a death metal sound with Iowa because I remember even hearing like the intro riff to I Am Hated, that dun, 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 that sounds like
Mhm.
a death metal riff.
Yeah, there's a lot of like yeah, death metal and like gory sounding stuff just splattered all over the place, and then you throw Corey's rapping over it, and like it was so unique. It just like blew my mind and like everybody's at the time.
Yeah, I
Uh,
always say if it wasn't for like Hybrid Theory, I wouldn't have gotten into Cannibal Corpse. And I
oh,
like a lot of
absolutely.
the metal elitists like to shit on new metal. So I'm saying like, okay, so when you were little, you were walking to school with your lunchbox listening to like Deicide or Emperor. Come on.
Yeah, no, totally. Unless you had like an older brother or something who was like who had that stuff and could bring you up on like, oh, this is what the real stuff is, brother. If you were like me, who was the older brother who like didn't have the guy to show you that stuff, you had to kind of find it out secondhand or later on the line. I, I if I'm gonna like downgrade my metal cred a little bit, the first time I heard Slayer or Iron Maiden or like a lot of that kind of stuff was on the Grand Theft Auto Vice City soundtrack.
Oh, really? That was on that soundtrack? Damn.
Yeah,
I've only ever
yeah,
played
V-Rock
San
had bangers.
Andreas. I never played Vice City.
Uh, but yeah, that franchise has been really good about like putting cool heavy music into their
Yeah.
soundtracks, and
Hope they put something
V-Rock I
for
have as
GTA
repeat.
6 whenever that comes out.
Uh, One day. But anyway, for like I guess the more like traditionally metal stuff, another like watershed moment was when I caught a rerun of like a 1991 episode of Saturday Night Live, and Skid Row was the musical guest at that point. Uh, Having them do Monkey Business and Piece of Me. I saw them doing their thing up there. Sebastian Bach like waving his hair around. There's got so much attitude on stage. I saw that and I'm like, all right, I'm growing my hair out now. This is like what I want to do.
Yeah. Yeah, from being like I was like me, kind of like I was like the new metal guy. I was listening to it. There was a radio station in Atlanta called Project 961. That's how I got into those gateway bands I mentioned. Like I also put Breaking Benjamin and 3 Days
Oh
Grace
yeah,
in there as long as the new metal stuff. But then of course it was my dad that got me into like the classic stuff, Metallica, Maiden, Priest, and all that good shit.
yeah. My dad was more of a prog guy, but he did play guitar and like do all that stuff too. So I thought uh, I'd be borrowing CDs from him. And most of the time, it'd be like Pat Benatar or Todd Rundgren or Yes, King Crimson. But the thing that like really of his catalog gravitated me towards guitar playing was all the Joe Satriani stuff. uh, one of his I think kind of overlooked albums is the one I first like fell in love with. It was called Strange Beautiful Music. Came out in like 2002 or something like that. Most people when they think Satch are going back to like G3 or Surfing with the Alien, that kind of stuff. But this was like kind of more of like an alt Satch album. There are some really heavy tracks, some stuff that sounded like it could be in a James Bond movie or like Top Gun or that kind of thing. And then uh, they do this like Hawaiian folk song. I forget what the title of it was, but you'd know it if you heard it.
Yeah. Yeah, but sort of like growing up in California, yeah, is that because you're from, I believe, LA?
Yeah, born
Yeah,
and raised.
so kind of growing up in California, yeah, because I feel like California is like a big market for like rock and metal because a lot of them classic metal bands like Metallica, Megadeth, Slay, you're and stuff. Of how do you feel about like the California like metal scene? Because I feel like that's like like a lot of the bands come from that. I think because at that part of the world is like or the U.S. is like a big market.
Yeah, it's been really great to me. I've seen a lot of cool bands come out here, and I kind of cut my live playing teeth on the Sunset Strip, playing at some of the pay to play venues now, but like the Whiskey or the Key Club or uh, Viper Room, that kind of stuff. Those were always awesome places to go as a fan, and when I actually got to like play those, even opening for some larger bands on like stacked bills. Like my first like sold out show I ever played was opening for Ed Guy and Camelot at the Key Club.
Dude, that's a hell of a bill.
I think this was like around 2008, and it's still like one of the top experiences I've had playing live in LA.
Yeah, I've that's definitely one of my bucket list places is to visit Los Angeles. Like I've been to California. Yeah, I've been to San Francisco. I've actually because when I was 13, me and my parents went on a trip there. We actually went north up there to see the redwood forest, which is absolutely
Oh, those are
amazing.
great. Yeah.
Yeah, and I've been in LA on a layover for about in 2009. I was actually going to Hawaii. Actually, was in a layover in there, so that was the only time I've technically been to LA. But I like to actually properly visit it.
Yeah, there's way too much to do. Like I think we're all honestly kind of like uh, paralyzed by choice, 'cause the it's really hard to like compete with the inertia of like wanting to do nothing because we have like a million things you could possibly do, and it takes like an hour to get anywhere with traffic. I actually live like in a pretty decent-ish location for that kind of stuff because I live right by the airport and like to go to the Sunset Strip or the Whiskey or whatever it's maybe like 7 miles up from me, but if you're going there around the same time as everybody else, then that's going to take you at least an hour, even though it's like basically a stone's throw away.
Yeah,
Uh, there's
I
a lot
know
of cool
that.
shit in Orange
Yeah,
County. Yeah, it's a pretty thriving scene.
yeah, because I know I'm on the East Coast. I live like north of Atlanta, but I know the feeling about the traffic because Atlanta drivers need to know how to fucking drive.
Oh yeah, you're a Prague Power guy, are you right?
Yeah, I was at the last one a few months ago.
Awesome.
Go.
Yeah, I was there too. I've probably run into you a handful of times. I've been going for like the last 3 years. But because the thing about these fests is like I've had my eye on it since I was like a little kid. But once you go to one of them, you end up having such a good time. You're like, okay, now I have to like figure out a way to make this happen every year.
Yeah. Yeah, essentially that's
And
like the big metal festival that happens in my home state, and I'm glad. I wish there was like something that's like heavier, kind of like a Georgia version of like Maryland Death Fest or
oh,
any of
that'd be
the
cool.
heavier fests.
But yeah, sorry. The reason I brought that up was because I was always like thrown aback by because we're in like Midtown Atlanta, and I'm seeing a lot of people like with really badass cars or like revving their engines really high. I'm like, I hear a little bit of that in LA, but it seems like I like on that particular drag, uh, it goes overdrive.
Yeah. Yeah, it's wild, man. I was like I was also curious because a lot of people know you from, of course, like your main three bands. Like, where were your bands even like before that? I'm always curious about the in-depth because I don't think nobody's ever talks about that.
Yeah, and I guess a good reason that they probably would have a good reason not to talk about my old stuff because it's like not that accessible from a like ability to find it standpoint, not like a sound standpoint, I guess. My first foray into like playing with bands and folks was I had like a little three-piece black metal band. I think we called ourselves Sovereign Throne at the time. It was like me and a couple of school chums.
Hell of a name.
Yeah, we started out basically just playing like old Behemoth covers from like the Chaotica era when they were still like really fizzy and before it came into their like Black and Death sound that everyone kind of knows them for now. We played like that, some Mayhem, some we had a couple original songs, but like nothing we ever really recorded or distributed anywhere because this was like 2005 or something. And recording was not quite as like uh, easy or widely distributed as it is now. We didn't just have a Reaper license we could evaluate for 1,000 days or something like that. Uh, but that was where I started, and then I also monkeyed around bass a little bit, and that's another group of folks from that same uh, scene was like, hey, you have a bass. Our bass player wants to play guitar. Do you want to play bass instead? I'm like, yeah, I'll do it. And that was a death metal act. A lot in the same vein. If you search really hard, you might be able to find some material from this band uh, floating around. We were called Mortified. Uh,
Huh.
and our sound was basically just like unpolished Polish death metal at the same vein. Your behemoths, your decapitated, your stuff, but that played with the uh, chaos and uh, level of skill that like 16-year-olds would have at the time.
Oh wow. Yeah, and I guess in kind of like the first band I want to talk about is The Keeper. For was that like the first band like of course like everybody knows?
No, actually, that band's not active at the time, but that was the one where I kind of got uh, back into playing bass with a band. It's some of the same guys from that death metal band, but people I knew in college who just kind of stayed in touch over the years, and they they hit me up one day and were like, "Hey, we need a bass player for this band." That's uh, one thing I wanted to say about why guitar and bass is like uh, learning bass has kind of given me a lot more inroads and opportunities to like keep playing music because guitar players like it, it's cool but we kind of grow on trees.
Yeah.
The good ones like really rise to the top, and I've noodled around for a long time, but I still seeing the skill level of people that I work with now, I consider myself like a very like medium, if not low tier guitarist. I kind of like I understand it like a writing tool and such, but I've really fallen in love with playing bass over the last like
Yeah.
5 years.
I remember hearing like one interview from somebody described bass players as frustrated guitarists.
Uh, kind of, I would say like an opportunistic guitarist in my case.
Yeah. Yeah, and how do you feel about all the bass player jokes and memes that are online?
Oh, most of the time I make them myself. Like, hey,
So you embrace the meme.
absolutely. You got to be able to make fun of yourself. If you take yourself too seriously in that way, then like, you're real fun at parties and music. It to a large extent is around about like partying with your friends.
Oh yeah. And then I guess in kind of I want to talk a little bit about Hydera.
uh,
Russ. So how did you get to know those guys?
Honestly, a Craigslist post. uh, and so in right after like college and like all of this kind of my previous act sort of went our separate ways or like fizzled out a little bit. I had to put on the corporate America costume for a little while and like kind of get my life together. And once I actually like was in a place of like relative stability, I'm like, what's a thing I haven't done in a while? Play music with a band, and I still had all this gear. I still like noodled around from time to time, so I just put up an ad, be like, "Hey, I'm a guitar player. I have a bunch of gear. I played in these bands. So want to make something." And then a dude responded to me. We set up a jam sesh, and I met some of those guys, and we had a few lineup changes, but kind of built a core group from that night, plus a couple of like mutual friends that came in and uh, made the project what it was at that point, and it had a good run.
Yeah. Yeah, and then of course you actually then joined up with Anubis. So how'd you get to know them?
I actually met them through the Hydera folks because we played in the same circuit. We kind of knew a lot of the same people. We played a lot of the same shows together, and me and the vocalist Devin were like of the same power metal persuasion. So we geeked out on a lot of that stuff. When both Hydera and the Keeper kind of fizzled out, like more or less around the same time, and then Anubis lost a couple members too for people move on. They run their course with the band, that kind of thing. People split for all sorts of reasons. But at that point was when Devin hit me up and said, "Hey, I noticed you play bass too. Do you want to like jam with us? Do you have any interest in this?" I'm like, "Sign me up. I'm not doing anything right now."
Yeah, and with playing with like between like an Anubis, Idira, and the Keeper, how different of a mind frame is it depending on like the bands that you play with? Are you allowed to like bring in like your own like free reign to any of the bands, or do you have like just a strict mindset depending on the project?
Yeah, it's largely project dependent, but I've been fortunate in that most, if not all, of the projects I've been part of have been really democratic about the writing process. With Anubis especially, I found it really refreshing that uh, we kind of all throw our ideas in the pile, and whatever is like the most complete or best fits like what we're going for at the time is like we'll write a song, be like, hey, this is cool, let's add some stuff. All right, that's the song. Let's record it, put it out. In some of my previous acts, the like frustrating part of it was that like we would jam together for like years and years and years and not actually put a whole lot of effort into or planning really into uh, having a finished product to show the world or distribute or whatever. We'd play shows out every now and again, but there's no like permanent record that our uh, efforts ever actually existed. Where which with Anubis, there's like uh, years and years of this stuff. I was in the band for like maybe a month or two before we released our first material with me on it.
Yeah, which was the Decoration Day EP,
Decreation Day, yeah.
Decreation Day EP. So, what was sort of like that recording process like, being that was like your first release with the band?
It was awesome. It's really low key in that Devin just brings his laptop and an interface to like wherever is comfortable for us. Sometimes it was our guitar player's house or their garage, or sometimes it's been my place here. Or like currently we've been going to our guitar player's like bedroom because he's got a full studio set up, kind of like I have here, but his is like more pro because he does music production and such for a living, and I just kind of do it for a hobby. But we just plug in, we do our takes, whatever it's the best ones, we'll end up massaging them around and like, all right, here's the song. We uh, put a real effort on like getting good performances, good takes, and good signal integrity. Then kind of sending that stuff out to mixing and mastering people who make it sound big. I think in some other projects I probably aired a little bit too much towards like trying to do it all ourselves. And I think what this act has taught me is the real value of outsourcing.
Yeah, and then of course I think the next thing I want to talk about is sort of like a one off single, "Wake Up with the Wolves." I think
Mhm.
that's a killer song. Tell me about what like the song and what that song's about.
That's a great one, actually. It's got a long history too. If you, I think somewhere in the band archives there is a video or something of us like showing all the stages that song has gone through over the years. Because uh, Devin, the main guy from Anubis, had started it in like 2018, but like previous acts have like carried that song around from year to year, and it changes a little bit each time. And this one was like the most condensed and I think accessible version of the song. I put in a short little bass solo towards the end of it, and like other versions of the song were like way longer and had like a kind of the Dragon Forcey solo sections that kind of went on for minutes and minutes, and like that can be super cool. But what we were trying to do here is like package it in like here's a 3.5 minute song. We get to the point right away. Big singable chorus.
Yeah. And then of course another one-off single I like to talk about is The Primevals. Like what's
Mhm.
that one about?
That was the first one that I contributed from my catalog to the band, and that song is a love letter to Diablo 2.
Yeah. Hell
uh,
yeah.
so yeah, I just want to make something really, really fast, heavy, thrashy, and kind of tell like or represent what I felt of when I was like playing that game or devoting my life to that game when I was in middle school. I was part of the whole the SOJ economy, and that was my first experience with scammers and getting way into the actual lore of the game was really cool. On top of the whole metas around the like your first pre World of Warcraft Battle.net stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. So like what's like your console to go to when it comes to games? Are you like a PlayStation guy or
I am absolutely a PC gamer at this point. I like way back in the day. I think like N64 and PlayStation 2 were like
yeah.
those were my
Dude,
jam. I
PlayStation 2 was my shit because my PlayStation 2 is like backwards compatible, so I played the original PlayStation 1 games. Like
mm,
I was like a huge into like Spyro the Dragon. That was like one of my favorite games. I also loved the Sly Cooper games, Jack and Daxter.
yeah,
Stir Kingdom Hearts is still one of my favorite series of, hence why I love all the like AMVs that are on YouTube with all those earlier bands
yeah,
that got me into music, like we mentioned earlier on.
totally. I in the Star Fox 64. That was like absolutely my game as a kid. The N64 was my first console that I like got as a kid. So, uh, I spent like way too much time playing that. I even had like a schedule of like how I'd go like the long way to Venom 2 at least like once or twice a day, just trying to get the higher score and beat expert mode without losing a wing and uh, all that stuff. I burned the hell out of that game to the point where like I was at a party one day and I talked a lot of shit about like how good I was at the game. So my friend at the time who was also like uh, also really into the game, like he devised a devious plan to get me absolutely shit faced, and only the point where I started getting chameleon eyes and like couldn't really like balance or whatever. And like, all right, we're booting up the console now, 1v1, let's go. And I I still beat his ass.
That's great, man. But talk to me about making Dark Paradise, which has been out since February. I was listening to it in
Hmm.
preparation for this interview and is absolutely a kick-ass album. So how was like the whole writing and recording process like, the being that this is the debut full-length Anubis album?
Yeah, so what actually the funny thing about that is the by the time I came into the band, that album was like pretty much already recorded. So you'll see it in like the liner notes. I actually didn't play on that CD, but I really liked all that material when they've been playing Heartless and Priestess and I think that Frozen Throne for like a good while. I saw them play those songs with another bass player before I joined the act, uh, and I also have really enjoyed like learning all that stuff and kind of putting my own spin on it. I play it a bit differently than you'll hear it on the record. Uh, but the next thing that you'll probably hear me on with the new Anubis material is going to be we have an entire album too, basically recorded and sitting on a Google Drive, ready to be packaged and what have. So I'm not sure exactly when we'll start like the promo cycle or the release for that, but uh, you'll be hearing a lot of good stuff there.
Yeah.
Of the Dark Paradise stuff, though,
And I was like, wow, a new album already. Holy
yeah.
shit.
So of the Dark Paradise stuff, I really enjoy playing Devour. That's a really fast, athletic song, and the that main riff. I you do the whole thing like just right in this little uh, fret like 1 to 3 area.
Yeah. Like that, like that album is still, the album is still great. Like even going like Heartless, Devour, Fallen. I even love like you guys did a cover. They all did like a cover of Death Symbolic. Like what?
Yeah.
I wonder what made them decide to cover that song in particular.
The I think basically we just needed a few more tracks to pad it out because the way it worked, or how it was told to me anyway, was we when the M Theory guys saw our current record label, they a couple of reps happened to be at a show that they played. I was there too, and I thought this was a great show. The M Theory guys were impressed with them, but at that point we were still in that uh, uh, content strategy of basically recording like a couple of micro EPs and putting those out because it's a higher velocity release than if we were to record like an entire album and then release that and then write a bunch of new songs and like just kind of blow it all at once. But the label's mainly interested in like okay, albums. We want albums. So they had like an entire another EP sort of thing planned, but when they had interest, they were like, okay, just let's add a few more songs here and make it an album. And uh, yeah, the death cover was like a really ambitious thing too, because you don't
Yeah.
hear a lot of like death or melodeath kind of music, like dirty vocals being turned to clean. You hear it a lot the other way around, but
Yeah.
that was definitely unique.
Yeah, and I love that song. It's like Symbolic is pretty much, in my opinion, my favorite Death album.
Yeah, Sound of Perseverance was mine,
I
but
love.
Symbolic is
I
like a
think
close second.
that's too. Do I even have like the Sound of Perseverance patch on my vest? That's too. I think that's a great album. But I also like Scavenger of Human Sorrow, Flesh and the
Mm.
Power It Holds. I even love their cover of Judas Priest's Painkiller. I thought
Oh,
that
dude,
was
yeah,
genius.
absolutely. Hey, that since I was talking about like death vocals going to clean or not vice versa, that was a one instance of a traditionally dirty singer who did the opposite and turned it into like a clean-ish. It was like as close to like Halfordy as you can get in a death metal voice.
Yeah, yeah, and I know that there are some like if you ever get like the 3 CD version of Sound of Perseverance, there's actually some demo versions where Chuck actually does clean vocals, which I thought was
Uh,
interesting. Even if he was still
hmm.
alive, I could have seen like Death do like clean vocals into their music.
Oh yeah, have you heard the Control Denied stuff?
I have actually heard. I think I have one of their albums. I haven't listened to it in a while. I need to revisit that at some point.
Yeah, because Chuck was a big power metal guy, and he was like starting to kind of write more stuff that uh, showcased that ability or that like uh, interest in the style. And I think the story of Sound of Perseverance was that uh, the label wanted one more death album out of him, and they took a handful of songs that were supposed to be Control Denied or some other act that he was like saving him for, and then he just recorded them with death vocals instead.
Yeah, I thought that was awesome. And an interesting fact, I saw a friend of mine talk about it actually because I thought it was cool from where I'm from the last Death show that they ever played live was actually in Atlanta, where I'm at.
Wow.
Yeah, I saw it was on Setlist FM. Last show ever was at the Old Masquerade in Atlanta, Georgia,
Ooh.
in 1998.
Oh well, yeah, the old Masquerade. I got my first taste of the new Masquerade this year with the unofficial Day Five
Oh yeah, I
Powerwolf
was at
Unleashed
that
the Archer
one.
show.
I saw Powerwolf for the first time, and of course, like Unleash the Archers are also good friends of mine. I've actually interviewed all 5 members before.
Oh, awesome.
So
Yeah,
yeah, yeah,
they're like one of my favorite bands right now for
yeah,
sure.
same. And I'm stoked to see them next year at 70,000 Tons of Metal. Get to see my friends.
Hey, I'll see you there too.
Oh hell yeah, hell yeah. Let's have some fucking drinks, man.
Yeah, dude.
Yeah, I would have loved to seen that last Death show. Too bad I was only 4 years old at the time.
Yeah, hey, I would have really liked to see Skid Row back in their prime, but I was just born.
Same. Like, why couldn't I have been born 10, 15 years earlier?
But we do get to see a lot of awesome stuff now though, so it's always a like retrospective if like why couldn't I have been born a little bit earlier so I could invest in Intel or buy some Bitcoin or see this band or
Yeah. Yeah, it's
uh,
always for me just see this band because I'm the closest we're gonna get to a time machine is like watching videos on YouTube.
oh true yeah.
That's why I see almost every comment saying like YouTube's pretty much like a time machine.
Yeah, yeah, back on the Skid Row thing, like there's this one set of like VHS tapes or something that a guy was recording one of their rehearsal sessions during the David of the Grind tour back in '91, and uh, you get to you get to see such a side of that band that like just doesn't You'll never see that again. And it's preserved on YouTube.
Hell yeah. And in terms of like playing live, because how different of a mind frame is it to like playing live versus CD? Are there similarities between the two, or are they completely different?
100% different. Uh, the recording process and the like laying it down on the C. Or are you talking about like Skid Row, or are you talking about like my process?
Yeah, your
Sorry.
stuff. Talk
Uh,
about your stuff, man.
oh yeah, yeah. It's 100% different. With the with the recording process, I already mentioned how it's really quick from like we write a song, we kind of show it to everybody, and we're like, okay, let's monkey around with some of this stuff. Maybe raise this piece up a key, or cut this part out, or make this part a little longer, shorter, or what have you. We get like real surgical with that. Then we'll record the part that we kind of guitar pro'd out or planned out that way. Uh, and then we'll, if we're going to play that live, we're going to start learning it, rehearsing it together. We basically like we write the song, then we learn the song. uh, but yeah, the live environment, that's where we go to unleash it, party, have fun.
Yeah.
I try to like move around on stage a lot because like one thing I really like about uh, playing bass versus playing guitar is like I get up in my head a lot more when I'm playing guitar because it's like it occupies a different range of sound where it's like really obvious if you screw up. And uh, in my bass tone's like kind of similar because I like the really like clanky, bright sound. So that's not to say like the meme like, oh, you're a bass player, nobody knows if you fuck up. But there is a little tiny element of that in there, and I feel like I can just like vibe a lot harder on stage. I've had a lot more like fun and less nerves.
Hell yeah. Yeah, and in terms of like playing bass versus playing guitar, do you find that you're able to like express like a different side of you creatively depending on like the two different instruments?
Absolutely. And because I've been fortunate to work with really talented guitar players in Anubis, I never have to like really worry about what the other guys are doing. I know they're just gonna nail whatever they're playing, so I can uh, focus on either uh, elevating their platform by just keeping it kind of simple, or if they're just ringing out chords on a big chorus or something, then I can uh, do some crazy tappy stuff or some Steve DiGiorgio kind of stuff. Or
Very great
it's really
bassist.
yeah, it's really like opened up a lot of uh, possibilities for me that I didn't really have a chance to experiment with a whole lot before I was in this band.
Hell yeah. Yeah, and in terms of like your approach to bass, because I think you don't gravitate towards flashy bass playing, but I feel like you find ways to link what the guitars are doing with the melody and what the drums are doing with the rhythm, but in a creative sense. So what's like your approach to like tracking the bass?
So when I write parts, I kind of alluded to it just in that last reply where there are some parts of the song where like you're not the star. The guitar is like the star here. The vocals are the star here. So what you got to do is like make your part elevate or accentuate those. And then there are other parts of the songs where they're hanging back a little bit, and then I don't necessarily need to just like double what they're doing, so I can go a little shreddier. I really like uh, the it's gonna sound like glazing because I take lessons from him, but Pete from Seven Spires is like a great
Yeah, the
example
homie.
of of where he some parts are just gonna be like kind of basic, but then there are times that like he's the star. The main like verse riff of Oceans of Time is a great example of that because you're it goes from this big old build up,
Yeah.
and then everything drops out and moves over here, starts doing this like crazy spider hand stuff, and the melody of it is really like memorable too.
Yeah, and I also think you have a great bass tone. So I'm curious about like what's like your setup in terms of like recording versus live. Like what kind of basses you use, like strings, pedals, amps, and all that good hoo-ha.
Ah, sweet. I love gear. So historically, most of what I've been playing is like Ibanez bases. I really just like their consistency, their construction, and how they feel in my hands. Actually, like right next to me is the this
Oh
it
wow.
has a headless six string,
That's
uh,
fucking awesome.
the EHB series. I do a good amount of recording with this, but these Nordstrand pickups are just mean, really bright, really high output. And then one thing that you'll probably have seen this in my photos and such, but I'll pull it off the wall right now. Uh, this this was a thing I found on Facebook Marketplace. It's a PV grind, I believe. That the I'm pretty sure the pickups and all the bridge and the internals were swapped out by the last guy who owned it because this thing's really bright. It uh, the neck's like really thin. A lot of times, what prevented me from jumping to playing six strings was from fives or whatever was
Yeah.
that
I was like, there's
anytime
a
I
six string bass. I never knew that. I thought there was
well
always like
yeah
four to five.
because when I picked these things up for the first time, I was like, most of these feel like I'm playing a freaking surfboard. This neck is so thick. What's going on? And this one, you can barely even tell that it's a six. It's like almost the
Oh,
same as a five, just like a little bit extra. So it just felt natural.
yeah.
That and so this thing's really bright on its own. We our recording process, I just we plug straight into the interface and I record the DI. And what you're hearing on the records is probably a VST actually. It's what we've been doing lately is the Tone Forge Hellraiser from a yeah, and that is just a brilliant $35 plugin. It sounds as good as any amplifier, if not better. Uh, Live, I'm a really big fan of dark glass stuff. So I have a Microtubes 900 head. I usually have the gain like kind of gain and drive like kind of in the middle, so it's like punchy but not and like grindy but not too fuzzy.
Nice.
Good.
Nice. Yeah. And then sort of like also in the end to sort of wrap things up, what's next for Anubis? I know we have the new album's been released for a while, and I know you have like new stuff in the pipeline. So what's next in terms of like playing live and stuff?
Well, the next upcoming show we got, I'm super stoked for this one. It's one that I would have had tickets to, and I actually bought tickets to it before we were announced on it. So
Bought tickets to your own show.
yeah, but this is going to be we're opening for Seven Kingdoms, Striker, and Lutharo.
Oh yeah,
Uh,
yeah. I'm seeing
yeah,
them in Atlanta next month. Guy
oh,
actually interviewing Seven Kingdoms too.
awesome.
And I know the
I
Lutharo guys, everybody. I've actually interviewed them, and I know their drummer, or who's dating my friend Lindsay in Canada.
Sweet. Yeah, I saw them at the Hyperspace Metal Festival not too long, like it was a couple years back where they played, but they really like were a pleasant surprise, and so I'm really stoked to be sharing the stage with them. I love Striker. They tore it up at Prague Power and pretty
Yeah,
much
same.
everywhere
They've
else.
they fucking kicked ass.
And the
Definitely have that kind of 80s vibe with them.
yeah, and they do it really well. I've described their newest output, Ultra Power, as a if Children of Bodom wrote a glam metal album.
I would sum that up too, man.
Yeah, and that's to say nothing of like how awesome and consistent Seven Kingdoms is live. I've seen them like seven times at this point.
Yeah, I think I've only seen them like two or three times. I think I last saw them a couple years ago playing with Dragon Force and Seven Spires.
Mm. Yeah, that also stacked bill. They every show they play, it's always like they're a treat, and they're always on a bill with like awesome acts that are of that same sort of vein.
Yeah, and it's very interesting because I'm going to see them in more of a smaller kind of part of the Masquerade in Atlanta because it's a Masquerade recently opened up a fourth stage because for the longest time they've always had like Heaven, Hell, and Purgatory as like the three stages, but they added a fourth one called Altar, which I had a peek inside and it's actually pretty good. I haven't seen any shows there, but they know they sell actually food there, so it was just pretty good. They actually have some good burgers and fries and stuff.
Mm. Yeah, I had a blast there when I don't know if it was the same like newer stage that you're talking about, but that at that Powerwolf UTA show.
Yeah, that was the main big stage, Heaven.
Mm.
That's been there
Uh,
for a while since they moved locations.
well, it was an excellent introduction to what I'm hearing is a pretty legendary Atlanta venue.
Yeah, I gotta see like what's like the big venue that's in Los Angeles.
There's a handful of them. It really like depends on the show that you're or size of the band that you're seeing there. I've seen a bunch of stuff at the Palladium. Palladium's like a pre- pretty big venue. I think
Does it
the
compare to
last.
like the Masquerade Heaven a little bit?
Oh yeah, it's way bigger.
Oh shit.
Yeah, just huge ceilings. Lots. I think from a capacity standpoint, it's probably like at least double the size.
Oh
Uh,
shit.
but yeah, not nearly as like intimate.
But thank you, Will, for this conversation. It was great to be able to have you on my show. It's just any final words you want to say to my fans and followers that are watching this to close this out.
Just yeah, support live music. Talk about your passions. If you want to start a band or do anything like that, just remember, sucking at something is the first step to being sort of good at something. That's like all we can really hope for. Have fun doing it. Uh, check out all the Anubis socials: anubismetal.com, instagram.com, Anubis Metal official, youtube.com, Anubis Metal. We got more stuff for you in the future, and I'm happy to see any of our shows.
Hell yeah. So everybody, Will from Anubis, we'll see you next time.
Yeah.